Today. I was thinking about investors and the challenges that they're going through in 2025 in terms of what's happening, how they could fix it, and just what we could do about the tariffs, the stagflation, all these pressures that are coming to bear. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit. I have a whiteboard here. I'm hoping this is visible here, but essentially, I want to talk about four different items today. The first item that I want to talk about is what is the problem? And first of all, I apologize here if I cannot spell, but basically, I want to say what is the problem. I think this is not close enough, so let me just move this a little bit closer. My apologies here. So, what's the problem that we're facing today? Well, the reality is that we are facing an era of tariffs and stagflation that we haven't seen since the 1970s. So let's think about it. We have tariffs that Trump is talking about. Some of them he's backed off, but he keeps going back to like, hey, I'm going to increase tariffs. No matter what, you're probably going to see at least a 10% increase in tariffs over the next few years. How is that going to affect this country? How is that going to make sure that we're able to understand what the prices will be and what will that do to prices? Well, obviously, if prices go up in terms of inflation, then what's going to then happen is, or I'm sorry, in terms of tariffs, then you're then going to have an associated increase in inflation as well. So we have a 10% increase in tariffs. We have a 10%, let's say then we then take a look at what that happens with that. So let's say we take a look at goods. So I'm thinking about Canada here. Canada produces a lot of gypsum. Gypsum is the material that's used for drywall. If they increase the price of gypsum from $10 to $11, you're going to obviously increase a lot of building costs. So, which gets to the next problem is how does this affect construction and real estate? Well, there's a few answers to this. The first answer, though, is that it's going to obviously affect materials. So think about material costs. Again, $10 to $11, the price of drywall goes up. You're going to have some increases in how much it costs to build a house. So hello for those of you who are joining. If you have questions, feel free to ask as I'm going through. The other thing that's going to increase, by the way, if we have those tariffs, is labor prices. Why are labor prices going to go up? Well, very simple. If you're starting to increase the prices of everything and you start increasing the materials, what you're also going to be doing is it's going to cost more to then import that materials in. So then you're then going to start seeing increased imports labor at the ports. You're going to also probably see people starting to charge more if they have to start bringing more expensive products to bear. That also means that you're probably going to see more higher loan on these materials. So think about the fact that if people do a 203K loan or a hard money loan, if you're an investor, I'm going to just put HM, what happens when you do those loans? Well, very simple. You have a loan on that money. So if you're having a loan for, let's say, $50,000, and you then find out that prices have now increased by $5,000. Well, if you're loaning on that, let's say you have a flat rate of 10%, just to give even numbers, that means that your interest rate on that on an annual basis on the money that you're borrowing now will cost you an additional $500. Who takes the brunt of that? Well, the buyers. So what we're seeing here is you have increased tariffs causing increased inflation. And when you increase the inflation, you have also increased prices. Oh, by the way, also when you do this, people have to have more money, which a lot of times leads to delays because, people don't always have additional money on them. So what that ends up doing is when we talk about real estate, it then increases the prices again, and it slows down the growth. So let's take a look at this, and we talk about slowed growth. So increased prices and slow growth is not a good combination. That's the problem that we're having right now, is that we're having increased prices, slowed growth, and in addition to that, we're then going to have higher unemployment as well. So if we're having higher unemployment and we're having all these factors coming in, what's going to happen is that you might see the real estate market increasing in value while at the same time you have fewer buyers. So if you're trying to sell your house for $350, which is about the average home price in America, and now you have to increase it because let's say prices went up by $5,000. Maybe you also have additional interest payments that you're paying on your loans. Well, now you're going to try and sell it for maybe $360. The problem is that you have higher rates and higher inflation, and the Fed will not lower the rates on interest when you have inflation. In fact, they raise them. So they're going to say, okay, higher inflation means we should raise rates. So now you have less people who could actually buy properties. That's the problem that we're going to face. And then at the same time, you're going to have all these people who are in the market and they're saying, hey, I want to buy, I want to buy. I know these are my wonderful stick people. I think these people are beautiful. I hope you like them too. And what's going to happen is they're going to go away. And you're going to have less people who are going to be able to afford it because now instead of putting down 10% on 350 or 3.5% if it's an FHA loan, you're going to have to put 3.5 down on 360, and instead of the rate being 7%, which it is today, maybe it goes up to 8%, 9%, 10%. Remember, the 1980s were some of the highest prices that you've ever seen. So with that said, you're going to start seeing higher inflation. So the question then becomes, what can we do? Are we just going to go into a doomsday scenario here? The answer to that is no. By the way, I'm seeing some responses about India and Pakistan having a big fight. I don't know anything about that, so I'm not going to jump into something that I haven't done research on. What I can tell you is that what we're going to do is we're going to plan. So one of our HVAC guys, because we have a contracting company, one of our HVAC guys buys 50 to 100 HVACs every year or furnaces every year at the beginning of the year. Why do they do that? Well, they do that because of the fact that they know if they're buying this, they're going to sell at least 50 to 100 by the end of the year. And they could reduce their prices by 10, 20%. So by buying more and buying in bulk, which a lot of contractors are doing, you're able to plan ahead. Because we know that prices today are going to be higher tomorrow. Which means that if we're selling services, if we're selling products, we could plan in advance for that. In addition to that, we could diversify. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to diversify materials. I understand there's only so much lumber that we could buy. There's only so much concrete we could buy. But, maybe we're taking a look at different types of materials. There's a lot of new ideas that are coming onto the market. If we could start advancing that, maybe even getting a little more eco-friendly, that'd be cool. Then we could start maybe finding other solutions, diversifying and trying to invest in other plans that might not require it. I'm not going to say go America because, if America doesn't have the resources, then we can't buy them. Eventually, though, what we're finding is that you're going to have more American companies that will be formed because of this, but it will take time. In fact, SBA has noticed an increase in loans for manufacturers in the United States just in the first quarter of 2025. Finally, we want to advocate. One of the problems that's happening is that with all of these changes here, sometimes politicians don't know what's going on. And by the way, I see people are saying hi. I'm saying hi back. With that said, if you're going to advocate, you have to be able to speak up. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I want to lay this out because as investors, I want to be able to make sure that everyone knows what's happening. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that we say, hey, look, this is not going to work if we're raising tariffs because as investors, as contractors, it's going to hurt us. And that's going to be a big problem. So if you want to be able to make sure that if you're looking to make sure that we could have a better future for real estate, we have to let them know. That means telling your congressman, telling your senators what's going on and say, hey, please fight this. Also, at the local level, there's a lot of crazy laws and restrictions that are being created. I know in Chicago, we have restrictions that are being created where they're actually raising property taxes. I know the city of Chicago needs money right now, but raising property taxes when you have higher interest rates, higher material costs, and higher sales price is not going to help. It's just only going to make the problem worse. So therefore, we have to come up with a solution that will not do this. Adding more fees on top of it, if you increase property taxes, like for example, the condo that I live in, they've increased the property taxes by over 33% in the last year based on assessments. That's insane. So that increases the price, and you're also talking about all this. That's where fewer people walk away and you have no buyers. So what we need to do is we need to find a way to make sure that there's more room in there for everyone to be able to buy. And we have to advocate for this. We have to let politicians know, yeah, look, we know you need money. We understand that. But you also have to be able to cut services when needed. You also have to be able to give help to people so they can buy properties and own properties without falling behind. And that's the problem that we're facing today. So with that said, we've talked about four things that we've talked about four aspects of this today. What the problem is, tariffs, stagflation. We've talked about the problem with construction materials, real estate. We've also gone into how this impacts the economy and real estate and what we could do. I'm curious about your thoughts because I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions. If you could put something in there, that'd be great. Let us know. I'm going to get off the line. In the meantime, this is Andy Nathan, Creative Smart Contractors. Have a great day and a better week. Talk to you soon.